Welcome back. I have a three-part treat for you today. We're going to head over to Pat's shop and he's going to show us how he carves a decoy body, including pattern making and tool selection.
Hi folks, welcome to my shop. So tonight we're going to talk about setting up a body and getting ready to carve. If you remember back to an earlier video where we talked about setting up the head, okay, where we laid a pattern, a profile pattern on a block of wood, cut out the head, laid it out, drew reference marks on it. Tonight we're going to actually do the same, apply the same principles to the body, okay, which is going to start with a pattern. This is my basic mallard pattern. I make my patterns out of either cardboard, I use like a cereal box, cardboard, or masonite, either one, but I do a half a pattern, okay? I do a half a body, and I'll explain that in a minute. But let's talk about, so where do you get patterns? Maybe I'm not artistic, maybe I can't draw my own patterns. Well, there's actually a couple of sources you can get patterns. The first source you can get patterns is there's a lot of good commercially made patterns, okay? There's good decoy carving books. You know, ones that come to mind are Bill Vise and Mark Costello. You know, there's an old one by Bob Berry. You know, but the point is there's a lot of good carving books out there that give you patterns. Already drawn head patterns, body patterns, different species. Even if you're an experienced carver, I'd take advantage of them. You know, using other patterns are fun, and you know, even your old time vintage carvers, they traded patterns. My great granddad, I've got a Charlie Purdue pattern that he got from Charlie. Back then, they were no different than we are today. They traded patterns. So commercially made patterns, whether it's in a book. Another good commercially made pattern is a guy by the name of Gordon Stiller. That's all Gordon does. Is make decoy patterns. He's got tons of them. They're actually like a blueprint. You know, if you Google Gordon Stiller, you could find you know, him and get access to its patterns. If you get the old Wildfowl Decoys book, Joe Barber, he actually blueprinted decoys and made patterns from them. Okay, so what's that telling you? Well, you can get existing decoys. Okay, old decoys, vintage decoys, you know, contemporary decoys, and you can make your own patterns from them. Okay, so that's another source of commercially made patterns. But along that same line of making your own, if you don't go to commercially made patterns, you can make your own patterns. Okay, and that's what I do. So how do you do that? One way you can make your own pattern is you can take an existing decoy. Maybe you have a decoy that you've purchased or an antique decoy, and one way you can do that is you can actually set that decoy on a piece of masonite or piece of cardboard or even on a block of wood, and you can trace that body pattern. Okay, this shoveler happens to be this same pattern. Okay, so you can make patterns from decoys. Another way that you can make patterns is, if you're real adventurous, is you can actually get you know, decoy books. I'm happening to think of Dick LeMaster's Great Gallery of Ducks. They've got a lot of good overhead patterns. You know, you can actually make patterns from them. But here's a thought for you. What better source to make good patterns than the actual bird itself? Countless times I've come home after a hunt. I've seen this species that I want to carve, and I thought, man, I got the real deal. I got the head and the body right there. So, give you an example. Last year, I went down to the club. I shot a couple specklebellies, and I was all excited about carving some specklebelly decoys. So I brought the specklebellies home. I got the measuring tape out. I measured the body from chest to tail. Okay, is that pretty accurate? I happen to think so. I laid the heads right on a piece of cardboard. I traced the head. I put it in a couple different patterns, and I actually made, you know, some nice upright specklebelly decoys, a nice preener out of it, right from an actual live specklebelly. So whether you get commercially made patterns or make your own, here's the point. If you're a waterfowler, you got the best material in the world to make patterns. So don't be scared to take a duck, to take a goose, lay it on a piece of cardboard or piece of masonite, make your own pattern. Okay, so now that we have our pattern made, we're going to go ahead and actually apply it to the block of wood or cork itself, okay? So I'm going to start with the body pattern. I do my body patterns, I mean, you can do a full pattern, you know, full contour, the overhead pattern here. I do a half. I tend to think it's a little bit more symmetrical because keep in mind, if I draw this side and flip it over, this is perfect. This left side matches the right side, so I do a half a pattern. And so what we're going to do is we'll take a Sharpie pen here. We're going to lay this block. I'm going to lay it over here so you can see. But we're going to lay that pattern on the block of wood, and we're just going to trace that pattern right side, flip it over, left side. Okay, now I'm going to take that. This is a piece of white cedar. I'm going to take it, put it on the bandsaw, and I'm going to cut out that overhead pattern. Okay, so once I cut out that overhead pattern, you basically you've got the basic shape of the duck's body. Now to take and move from that white cedar to, I'm going to jump over to a piece of cork here. You can see same pattern. Okay, flipped it over, so I've got that overhead pattern cut out. And now what I want to do is I want to draw what I would call the profile pattern on the side of that body. Let me pause a minute and talk about a pattern for this. Being an experienced carver, I freehand it. And the reason I do is because I've done so many of them. Honestly, I can do it faster than laying a pattern on here. But honestly, if you're a beginning carver, I would encourage you to make a profile pattern, you know, maybe out of a piece of cardboard like this, you know, that can bend and match the contour of that body. The reason for that is it's going to get, you're going to, you know, in the beginning, you're not going to know that profile pattern as well as once you're experienced. And the point is if you have that same consistent pattern, which needs to be the same length from chest to tail, you can lay that on there. You can get that profile pattern same way every time. Okay, so I would encourage you in the beginning to make a cardboard pattern for that profile pattern, put it on your block of cork or your block of wood, and trace it. You can see here I've got the seat of the neck here. That's where the head's going to sit. But you know, in terms of little duck anatomy here, you know, a puddle duck is going to have that high tail. Diver duck's going to have that lower tail. So what I'm going to do is, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of draw this, and I'm just retracing here for you. I'm going to draw the seat of that neck. That's where I want that head to sit. Okay, you can see that pattern there. I want this low head snuggler to sit there. Now I'm going to give it a nice round chest. I like a nice round chest on my decoys. Then I'm going to bring the back up here. Okay, draw the back all the way back to the tail. Now my style is I draw a little a drop here and then the tail. This is going to represent the primaries right there. Okay, then I'm going to kind of draw the rump under here like so. Alright, and essentially that is the shape of the body. That's the side. That's what I'm going to lay on the bandsaw table, lay this on its side, and cut that out. Okay, because what's going to get cut out is this going to get cut out. Up here is going to get cut out. A little bit of this chest in here is going to get cut out, and a little bit of that primary is going to get cut out. So all this is going to go away, and that's going to get that block down to a look that's going to look something like this. Okay, you can see the round chest, the rump, and all the backs off of here, and here's the seat of the neck. Okay, so that's cutting out the profile. What I'm going to do also is I try to economize my work. I make so many decoys that if I can cut something off with the bandsaw and get rid of it instead of carve it, I'm going to do it. So what I'll do is, you see this straight line right here? That's for my diagonal cut. So what's going to happen is, I'm going to set my finger on the top of that block, my pinky, about like that. I'm going to set it, and I'm going to run from the seat of that neck all the way back to that tail like that. I'll turn my block over, and I'll do the same line on the other side. Okay? So what's that line all about? What that line is I'm going to tilt my bandsaw table at a 45 degree. I'm going to lay that on there, and I'm going to shave this area here, all this 45 at a 45 degree angle. I'm going to shave that off, okay? Because keep in mind, to carve a body, what you're doing is you're taking something that's square and you're making it round. So you know, why not take this off with a bandsaw? You can take a lot more in about 15 seconds. I can cut this whole side off with that bandsaw rather than carve it down with a draw knife or a spoke shave. Okay, but with those diagonal cuts, I'm going to cut the left side of the body. I'm going to flip it over on the bandsaw. I'm going to cut off the right side of the body. I do a little bit of trimming under the rump on the diagonal, and basically that's it. Now that block is ready to put in the vise, in the brace, and then ready to carve. Okay, so at this point we've done all our overhead cut, we've done our trimming, we've done our diagonal cuts, and this block is really ready to carve. So where do we go from there? I'm going to talk a minute about vices. Boy, there's a lot of schools of thought and theories on vices. I happen to use just a standard woodworker's vise. Now what I've done a little different with mine is I've taken a 2x10 here and I've cantilevered it away from my bench. And the reason I do that is to get that block, be able to, for me to get that block away from my bench so I can kind of leverage and not be running into the bench while I'm carving. So you can use that all the way down to a regular machine vise. Works well. A carving horse, so if you're really old school and excuse me, want to use a carving horse, that'll work well. But with a woodworker's vise, you're going to need some kind of brace to attach to the decoy to hold it into the vise. I happen to use this 1.25 inch square stock. It's just hollow steel stock. It's got an 8-inch shaft on it and a piece of 1/4 inch plate with 2 holes in it. And what we do is we affix that to the bottom of the decoy with a couple of deck screws, and that's going to hold the block. It's going to allow me to hold that decoy block, the body, in this vise and position it multiple ways so I can carve it. Okay, so let's go ahead, and I'm going to go ahead and put my brace on the bottom of this body. Like I said, just use standard deck screws to secure it to the bottom of the block. Piece of white cedar. So you can see that secures it to the bottom of the block. Now I can put this and position this in this vise. I can position it this way and carve this way. I can turn the body around this way and carve this way. I can do it all kind of ways. Here, here, here. I can turn it around here, here, and here. So the point is, this gives me multiple ways to really attack and carve the different parts of this body. So that's one of the reasons why I like this particular brace and this particular setup. The other thing I like is that this brace allows me to get that body away from the vise so I can actually physically get around and work on this. Okay, so anyways, that's the point of having that 8-inch shaft, is I can get the actual body away from the vise itself. Because keep in mind, one of the things that you need to understand, especially about wood, not so much about cork, but with wood has grain, right? And so, you know, just about the middle of that block, you're going to about split that block in half. And this is going to need to be carved that direction, and this is going to need to be carved that direction. Okay, so when using your knives, when using your rasps, you know, you want to kind of understand where that grain changes, and you're going to carve this in this direction and that in that direction. Okay, up here you're going to carve in that direction and this direction. Okay, so real important to understand when doing that body is that grain's going to change on you. And I'll just alert you to the fact that that wood's going to tell you if you've jumped over that center line, it's going to tell you right away that you've jumped over that grain. So anyways, just be mindful about knowing where that grain change is at.